For 1,000 years, Earth knew only peace. No wars, no weapons, no enemies. The galaxy called them harmless, the gentle ones. But when a brutal alien force arrives, demanding surrender, Earth says nothing, not a word, not a warning. Just silence, but make no mistake. Beneath that silence, something ancient is waking and the galaxy is about to learn. The quiet ones are the ones you should fear most. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. For nearly 1,000 years, Earth had known nothing but peace. Cities floated on oceans. Forests grew where deserts once ruled, and the stars were no longer distant. They were places to visit, to learn from, to share with. Humanity had stepped away from war and conflict, choosing instead to build a world where cooperation was the highest form of power. Children learned through art and science, not fear. Weapons were things of the past, tucked away in history books like old myths no one truly believed anymore. The world was quiet, and that quiet had shaped an entire civilization. Callan Rowe, a retired engineer who now worked as a historian, spent his days in the Central Archive beneath the city of Solvana, a massive glass-domed structure floating peacefully in the equatorial skies. His hands, once used to repair interstellar engines, now turned pages of old digital texts and scanned faded images from centuries long gone. Most people didn't care much for the past. It was distant, irrelevant. But Callan found comfort in it. There were things about humanity, buried deep in time, that still mattered. One evening, as silver clouds drifted past the archive dome and soft orchestral music played through the central system, Callan noticed a flicker on his screen. A file marked as temporal latched had unlocked itself. These files were sealed based on calendar thresholds, meant to remain hidden for specific lengths of time. Curious, he opened it. Inside were old schematics, defense blueprints, communications, logs marked with words like protocol stasis and deep reserve response. His brow furrowed. These weren't simply relics. They were live systems, still linked, still listening. Across the ocean in a high-altitude city called Kirel, Mira Talon sat in her small study at the School of Stellar Cultures. She was preparing a lecture on interspecies emotional theory when a strange data burst hit her neural uplink. It came from an inactive Earth node, one located somewhere in the old polar regions, where nothing had operated in over 5 centuries. Embedded in the transmission was a poem, written in the early days of the harmonic accord, describing the silence that follows after the fire has gone out. It was a metaphor, but one that hit Mira with a strange unease. Meanwhile, far beneath the planet's surface, in tunnels older than most modern cities, a man named Cale Draven moved through the ancient maintenance corridors of what was once Earth's core infrastructure. He wasn't supposed to be down there. His work pass had long expired. But Cale had always lived with a sense of something unfinished, something hidden. The air in the tunnels buzzed with an energy he couldn't explain. Lights blinked that hadn't blinked in centuries. He placed his hand on one of the old panels and felt the metal pulse beneath his fingers. Something was waking up. None of them, Callan, Mira, or Cale, knew each other. But over the next 3 days, they would be connected by a series of quietly unfolding events. An old orbital platform blinked online for 3 seconds, then went dark. A string of satellites began transmitting to one another in a language even Earth's modern AIs couldn't translate. Drones, long dormant beneath city. Floors and canyon valleys powered up with silent precision, then shut back down again. All of it was happening quietly. The public didn't know. The planetary councils had no alerts. But the systems that Earth had once trusted for its survival, the ones humanity had hidden away when peace arrived, had started listening again. Something out there had triggered them. And the strange part? No alarms were sounding. It was as if Earth itself was watching and waiting. Then came the signal. A narrow band frequency bounced across Earth's upper atmosphere, caught only by outdated receivers left behind in old listening towers. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't aggressive. It was simple. You are observed. Respond. Comply. Or be corrected. No name. No origin. Just the tone of certainty, one used by those who did not expect resistance. Callan received it through his archive network, confused why a historian would get such a thing. Mira, recognizing the speech pattern as similar to ancient expansionist dialects, immediately began tracing its linguistic roots. Kyle didn't get the message directly, but the tunnels below his feet began to vibrate with a low hum, as if the world itself had received a call and was choosing whether or not to answer. The Varnock remnant, a war-born species once defeated and exiled from the Galactic Union, had returned. They saw Earth not as a threat but as a symbol, a soft, slow-moving planet that had traded its claws for culture. To the Varnock, peace was weakness, and Earth would be their proof to the galaxy that strength should once again rule. But Earth didn't panic. It didn't send envoys or plead for protection. It simply waited. And in that waiting, something deeper began to move. Callan met Mira through a secured academic channel drawn together by overlapping data. When they found Kale, who was listed in no modern records, they realized something bigger was happening. None of them had ever been part of a military, and yet, the systems, now reaching out to them, didn't care about that. The systems were old, older than peace. But not forgotten. As the stars above twinkled in innocence and the people of Earth slept, thinking of music and gardens and art, something else was remembering, and it was remembering everything. The stars above Earth shimmered, quietly as they always had, giving no hint that something was coming. Life continued as usual. Children played in gravity gardens, musicians performed in floating amphitheaters, and scientists debated peaceful theories over cups of sea foam, tea. But far beyond, in the dark reaches of the galaxy, a decision had been made. The Varnock remnant had set their course. Earth, to them, was not a home of progress. It was a target, a quiet place meant to be conquered. And the invasion had begun. Their message to Earth was cold and clear. You will submit. Your skies and systems will belong to the Varnock. Resistance is waste. The harmonic accord, the Council of Peaceful Planets Earth had joined long ago, urged calm. They believed Earth would obey. Why wouldn't they? The planet had no armies, no defense fleets, no war leaders. Earth was the gentle one, the quiet, friend of the stars. No one expected it to resist. But Earth did not answer the Varnock. It did not surrender, panic, or even flinch. It asked only for time. To prepare a response, the message said. The Accord thought it was a delay to organize, a peaceful handover. The Varnock believed it was weakness, but underground, deep in the old world where roots met stone, something else had begun to wake. Nira Kamari stood at the edge of a long-forgotten tunnel in the ruins of what had once been a weather regulation facility. Her gloved hand brushed aside vines and dust to reveal a steel door covered in symbols. The door clicked, then opened, not to the sound of alarms or guns, but to silence. Inside were machines built by people who had once known what it meant to fight, then chose not to. Their fingerprints still lived on these machines, stored away like ancient seeds. Not far from her, Ten Voren, a former city architect, walked the halls of a long dormant satellite control center hidden beneath an old starport. He was supposed to be working on urban expansion designs. Instead, he was activating something called Grove Vale Layer 4, a system made to disguise military satellite clusters as weather drones. The satellites didn't look threatening. They still spun like peaceful machines. But now they saw everything. In orbit, Torin Malik stood in the observation ring of a quiet station. He had grown up here, raised by researchers studying light, behavior, and radiation. He'd never held a weapon, he didn't need to. His mind worked faster than most machines. And now he was helping reroute energy grids to power silent orbital defense nodes. Nodes nobody else even remembered. Earth was not building new weapons. It was uncovering old choices. Systems had been hidden within peaceful tools. Defense had been layered under education and science. The planet had grown stronger not by sharpening swords but by planting shields beneath every part of life. And now, it was peeling back the leaves. The people, for the most part, still didn't know. Earth had been so peaceful for so long, few even believed threats still existed. But the ones who did know, Nira, Ten, Torin, and others, were not afraid. They weren't soldiers, but they had been trained quietly, patiently, by protocols that waited in silence for centuries. Back at the Harmonic Council headquarters, Mira Talon watched the news feeds with a calm face and a storm behind her eyes. She had seen the signals. She knew what the Varnock believed about Earth, and she also knew they were wrong. At her side, Callan Rowe finished translating another fragment of an ancient protocol titled, "Silence does not mean absence." He looked up at Mira and said, "It's happening again, isn't it?" Mira nodded. "No," she said softly. "It's continuing." Across the planet, things began to shift. Old museums labeled historic war technology quietly closed their doors. Greenhouse domes near the equator began redirecting power. What looked like cargo transports docked with hidden modules, slowly reshaping themselves into something new. Quiet orders moved through underground channels, encrypted not with numbers, but with music. Specific melodies only known to certain minds opened certain doors. Then came the broadcasts. Earth didn't send warnings to the Varnock. It didn't threaten or shout. Instead, Mira released a poem, a simple one, written in the early centuries of peace during Earth's transition from war. It played across open channels in dozens of languages. "We buried our swords not in fear, but in hope. Our hands are not empty. They are simply open." The poem spread. Not just on Earth, but across nearby colonies. People didn't fully understand it, but they felt something stir. They began to look around at the walls of their homes, the structure of their cities, the very patterns of their skylines, and they began to wonder what had been hiding there all along. The Varnock saw none of this. They waited above, confident in their belief that Earth was slow, soft, and silent. Their scouts moved into position, their ships powered up. But they didn't notice the way the shadows shifted. The silence remained. But it wasn't fear. It was the sound of preparation. And beneath that silence, Earth was remembering. Not the violence, not the hate, but the strength. It had never left. High D. Above the clouds of Earth, the Varnock fleet hung like a dark ceiling. Their warships lined in perfect rows ready to strike. The Harmonic Accord sent one final message begging for peace, urging Earth to surrender before it was too late. But no, reply came. Earth remained quiet, not from fear but from focus. Far below in a studio built into the mountains of old Europe, Senirali sat cross-legged, surrounded by a swarm of tiny drones. They weren't weapons, not yet. They were meant for art, for shaping clouds and creating floating sculptures that danced during planetary festivals. But tonight they learned a new purpose. With a few adjustments and a silent code whispered through a neural interface, the drones blinked red, then vanished into the night sky. What once painted beauty in the air was now part of Earth's invisible shield. Across the sea, Oren Fail stood in a massive server room, once used to design virtual education games. For decades, Oren had taught children how to think like strategists without even realizing it. But now he was using that same platform to run a global simulation, one that tested thousands of battle scenarios using live data from the Varnock fleet. He didn't need to fire a single shot. He only needed to predict the future better than they could. In a quiet forest town, Ryan Solis sat at an old wooden desk, surrounded by books, recordings, and ancient stories. She wasn't a fighter. She told bedtime tales, wrote music, and helped communities remember their roots. But something inside her said now was the time to do more. Using the global broadcast system, Rayen began creating a new kind of message, one not meant to scare but to stir. Her voice, calm, warm, unshaken, carried stories into space. Stories of humans who had once stood with nothing but hope. Of small, acts that changed worlds, of hands that held onto dreams even when everything else fell away. At first, the Varnock ignored the transmissions, but slowly, their soldiers began to listen. The messages were emotional, strange, and deeply human. They weren't threats, they were memories, they were songs, and they began to do something the Varnock had never expected, make them feel. Above, a Varnock scout ship entered Earth's orbit, scanning for weak points. It fired a warning beam into open space, a show of power. Before it could calculate the Yandan response, the beam was intercepted mid-flight. No explosion, no counterattack, just gone. The ship's instruments flickered in confusion. They had never seen a defense that silent. In orbit, the Grovale layer, now fully active, twisted the truth around Earth. Satellites once disguised as space junk revealed advanced cloaking nodes. Civilian transport ships equipped with defense. Pods hovered in formation without a sound. Every move Earth made was calculated, quiet, and patient. Sen's drones formed mirrored walls in the upper atmosphere, bending signals and reflecting scans back at the Varnock like echoes. Orin simulations ran thousands of possible attacks, and blocked each one before it could happen. Rayan's stories were now part of Earth's active defense, coded in a way that disrupted the enemy's neural communications with waves of emotion and confusion. Still, the Varnock pushed forward. Their ship surrounded Earth like a noose. The Accord watched helplessly, unsure of what to believe anymore. This wasn't the Earth they remembered, the soft planet of gardens and poetry. Something else was unfolding. Down on the planet, underground hangars opened slowly. But what rose from them wasn't an army of soldiers. It was a strange collection of machines. Old terraformers rebuilt into mobile shields, towering construction mechs now reprogrammed to hold defense arrays, and drones with wings shaped like birds but eyes sharp as glass. From quiet towns and silent valleys, people stepped forward, not with guns but with purpose. Scientists, musicians, mechanics, farmers. Some barely trained, some trained for years in secret. They weren't warriors. They were citizens. But they had come. The Harmony Guard, a peaceful global service once meant to protect Earth's natural beauty, shifted into its final form. A planet-wide response team made of ordinary people using extraordinary skills. Some flew repurposed research vessels. Others coded firewalls to stop Varnock tech. Still more simply delivered food, medical aid, and support to keep Earth running while the defense systems activated. Even children played their part. Years of educational games designed to teach creativity and logic had prepared them without anyone realizing it. They worked with local AI systems, helping identify patterns in the Varnock fleet. Some even joined Rayan, shaping stories that would confuse enemy scans by mimicking command tones. And through it all, no official leader took the stage. No great general shouted orders. Instead, Earth moved like an orchestra, each note played by someone different yet all in harmony. In the central defense hub beneath Mount Virion, the lights glowed softly. Sen monitored drone patterns. Orin fed new simulations into Earth's orbital AI. Rayan recorded her latest story about a small village that refused to give up during a storm that lasted 100 nights. None of them wore uniforms. None of them gave speeches. But all of them were part of something larger. The Varnock still didn't understand what they were facing. Their systems reported no armies, no fleets. Their logic told them Earth was delaying surrender. But deep down, somewhere, inside them, a seed of doubt had been planted. Their confidence was beginning to crack, because Earth had not responded with noise or force. It had responded with silence, with precision, with purpose, and with something the Varnock had never prepared for: humanity's quiet fire. The Varnock fleet arrived in full, hundreds of ships darkening Earth's orbit like a moving wall of steel and shadow. Their formation stretched across the sky, layer upon layer, ready to erase any thought of resistance. They had faced countless enemies across the galaxy. None had surprised them. None had truly stood. And Earth, quiet and soft in their eyes, was to be no different. But the first strike did not come from the Varnock. From the far side of Earth's moon and the quiet edges of Mars, light flared in silence. Earth's ships, hidden, strange, and fast, moved like streaks of thought. These weren't warships built to intimidate. They were exploration vessels, cargo haulers, even science platforms, reborn with new purpose. Each carried defense systems developed in secret. Their goal was not destruction, it was disruption. Inside one such ship, Commander Bryn Allen stood at a circular console surrounded by soft lights and scrolling data. He had never led a battle. He had once taught history at a lunar colony. But now, he led Earth's most critical mission, to unbalance the Varnock from the inside. His team wasn't made of soldiers. It was a mix of thinkers, coders, engineers, and dreamers. And beside him stood Mira Loris, a former peace envoy turned strategist, her mind sharp with calm, focus. They didn't yell commands, they didn't panic. They simply acted. Using slip-space disruptors, technology Earth had kept hidden for generations, they dropped inside the Varnock formation. Not beside it, not outside it, within it. Varnock ships spun in confusion as Earth's vessels flashed into view, fired precise disabling shots, then vanished again. Their command systems couldn't react fast enough. Their AI guidance struggled to track anything that didn't behave like a traditional threat. Earth had flipped the rules. Back on the planet, the defense systems ran with eerie precision. Terraforming towers, once used to plant trees and clean oceans, stood tall and still, but with a single signal they shifted. Platforms unfolded, revealing launch mechanisms. The machines didn't roar or rattle, they moved with quiet power. Construction mechs repurposed from building floating cities marched slowly into formation. Civilian drones, painted in bright colors and shaped like birds and fish, formed shifting shields around cities, reflecting incoming scans and blocking invasive signals. What once looked harmless now stood like armor. People moved through their streets calm and focused. Schools became command hubs. Libraries became strategy rooms. Artists broadcast messages of hope through the skies. Mechanics worked shoulder to shoulder, with AI programmers building defenses from farming tools. No one panicked, no one hesitated. And then came Earth's second response, one that the Varnock could not see coming. In the old digital libraries beneath the northern continent, a small team had been working not on weapons, but on memory. Led by Lara Anith, a young cultural translator, they had gathered films, music, stories, and messages from Earth's long past. These were not battle plans. They were experiences, raw and honest, filled with emotion and meaning. Lara coded them into streams that could reach the Varnock fleet. Not directly, but through their systems, through curiosity, through open channels left untouched because they didn't seem dangerous. The messages played on Varnock ships in fragments. A soldier watched a story of a family rebuilding a broken village. An officer heard a child singing a song about courage. Another saw a speech from centuries ago, of a human leader choosing unity over victory. The messages weren't just stories. They were truths. And the Varnock, raised only in conquest and control, didn't know how to process them. Confusion spread. Fear, a feeling they had never needed, crept in quietly. Earth didn't stop there. In the center of orbit, the memory wall, activated, a holographic projection spanning miles shaped by Earth's light satellites. It showed no weapons, no enemies, just images, hands building, people helping, moments of triumph after pain, and then a voice. Commander Bryn Allen, calm and steady, spoke through every open channel. We do not rise in anger, we rise in defense. You thought we forgot who we were. We never did. Below, Earth's people stood still. The skies remained filled with calm fire. The Varnock, for the first time in memory, hesitated. Their largest ships began to drift out of formation. Some collided. Others stopped responding. The AI that held their fleet together had been touched, not erased, but overwhelmed by data it was never trained to understand. Feelings, choices, stories, On Earth, Bryn gave the final order, not to strike, but to pause. The Varnock were beaten, not by fire, but by humanity's will. Then, a signal came. From the Varnock's main command ship. One word, surrender. The stars fell quiet. Humanity could have destroyed what remained, but it didn't. Instead, rescue ships launched. Medical teams moved in, not as victors, but as helpers. The same hands that had built floating cities now treated injured Varnock soldiers. The same minds that once created art now taught peace. And when the Harmonic Accord offered Earth a seat on its high council, Earth gave a different answer. Bryn stood before them and said, "We don't want a chair at the top. We want a table where all voices are heard." The Accord agreed. A new council was formed, built not on power, but on shared memory. In time, the Varnock began to learn, not through control, but through connection. Back on Earth, the sky cleared, cities returned to laughter and light. The people walked forward not as warriors, but as protectors of peace. And across the galaxy, when other planets spoke of Earth, they used a new name, not the soft ones, not the dreamers. They whispered it, with awe, the steady flame. Because now they knew. Never underestimate the ones who choose silence over shouting. Because when they rise like a whisper, and whispers can move worlds.